Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from the United States, English language, released in the year 2017, directed by Steven DeGennaro, and this film is called Found Footage 3D. So Found Footage 3D is about this film crew who are going to make the next biggest found footage horror film. They want it to be a little bit different, so they decide to make it in 3D. So it kind of defeats the purpose of found footage, and the director of this film doesn't like this, but the guy who's producing it says, look, this is how it's going to be. So the producer doesn't really have any idea whatsoever, but he believes that he's on to the next biggest thing. He has delusions of grandeur, and this really starts to have a negative effect on the rest of the crew. So they go to this cabin in order to shoot the film, but then they realise that maybe it's getting a little bit too real for their liking, and that strange things start to happen inside this cabin, which forces them to believe that maybe they are in fact part of a film, and this film is actually going to have a devastating consequence on their life. So whether or not that is the case is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Found Footage 3D. This was a very strange film in that there were a lot of positives and there were moments that I really liked about the movie, but ultimately the movie was a failure. And so I will go into the negatives a little bit later, but the negatives kind of are the positives as well. And so to start off with, this is a movie that is very self-aware. It's making fun of itself and it's showing the shortcomings of this genre of found footage. And so it is a movie that's making fun of the audiences, and it's saying that if you just put a new gimmick to found footage, or not only found footage, but just put a new gimmick into any kind of film, people will go and watch it. If that's in 3D, people will want to go and watch it no matter what. No matter how ridiculous the overall film is going to be, they will actually come to watch it. And this is what the directors will do. They will sacrifice their work for a quick buck. And so the movie's trying to give you that impression, is that this guy's saying, let's just put it into 3D, everyone's going to want to watch it, we'll charge $10 extra, and we're going to make a fortune out of it. So you never really think that these guys actually care about their art, as opposed to actually making money. And that's something that Hollywood, you know, that's basically the way of the world is Hollywood, is that it's all about making a buck, it's all about watering something down, or having that new gimmick that will make people want to go and watch it, and you're going to sacrifice your art as a result of that. And so the movie does show that. The producer of the film, he's actually going to very great lengths in order to try and get that gimmick, but then you've got the director of the film who's trying to make it a lot more realistic, so he's actually caring about his art. So on one hand you've got a guy who cares about film, and the other guy it's all about money, and when those two ideas clash, money comes out in the end. And so it's like films where you hear to no end about Hollywood films where the director comes out and says, I wanted this movie to be a certain way, but the producers and the people in charge of the companies, they didn't want it that way, so we had to go and make a different style of film. And so you could always hear about the director being very angry, and this movie does emulate that problem. And so I like the behind the scenes look at this film, and it's, as I said, it's making fun of itself. It's making fun of the idea of gimmicks. It's making fun of the idea of found footage. They're constantly saying, why would someone be holding a camera when they're running away? And so I thought, okay, the first, say, quarter of this film was very fascinating in that regard, but then all of a sudden you start to realize that life is starting to imitate art, and that what they're actually shooting is actually happening. And so the shortcomings of found footage is actually starting to happen in real life. And so I thought the way it blended real life with the overall mocking of the found footage was very smart. And as the two start to come together, you don't know what's real and what's not. And so that's how they kind of blend it. And I thought for the most part it actually worked quite well. And there were moments that I thought were very creepy, because you always have that impression of, is it on film? Is this what they're actually trying to do for the film? Or is it actually starting to have the effect on their reality? And so I thought that, as I said, that was good. I thought there were some moments in the dialogue that were very, very funny, had me laughing out loud. But the problem with the film is that all of the good nature in this movie is in the first quarter, or maybe the first half. But then in the second half, it starts to outstay its welcome quite considerably, because it's all about bickering. And after a while, you start to sense that, all right, we need something to kick into gear to actually elevate this film and actually continue that level of interest. But the interest is never continued to a point where I thought as though it was a satisfying experience. Right at the end, it does kick into horror, but apart from that, you've got these very uninteresting characters. The overall situation is very interesting, but you've got the bickering between the two between these crew members, and it starts to become annoying. And yes, I know that this is what it's supposed to do, show you the shortcomings of found footage and how it's actually emulating real life, but I thought the movie was a little bit too self-aware for its own good, in that, okay, it is mocking itself, but it needs something else to actually make it an interesting experience. And so it's only so much of, you know, saying to yourself, look how silly we are, that you can take before you start to realise that the movie doesn't really have anything else going for it. So I thought it was a very empty experience. It goes for 100 minutes, and that is way too long for a movie like this. And once again, yes, as I said, it's a self-aware film, and it's saying, look, we're silly, we're making fun of it, but I felt as though that was an excuse and a distraction in the fact that it didn't really have anything going for it. In the end, I thought it was kind of a pointless sort of experience, and it really should have been stopped after about halfway, because that's where all the good things start to wear thin, and you start to want a little bit more, and that little bit more never really comes. So I thought this is a disappointing experience. It did have its likable qualities, but in the end, it's a movie that I wouldn't recommend. So overall, for found footage, going to give this one 1.5 stars. Alright guys, this is my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you there.